We are live. Hello, everyone. Nicole Latoile here. I am your moderator for this session. I would love to introduce you all to Dr. Robyn Defelice, PhD. She is a learning entrepreneur, author, and presenter with over 25 years in the L&D field. She is the co-author of Microlearning, Short and Sweet, and has been researching how long it takes to develop training for over a decade. She helps to unlock the strategic, operational, and tactical effectiveness of the L&D function in a variety of industries, from corporate to manufacturing, government to higher education, and nonprofits to startup. She is happiest when she is empowering the L&D professional, and I have experienced that myself. She is happiest when she is empowering others. Her new book, Maximizing the Power of Microlearning, will be released in the fall of 2025. Please welcome Dr. Robyn Defelice to the stage. Hello, Robyn.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you for such a wonderful, warm welcome. I appreciate it. And thank you, everyone. I just want to make sure we can all see screen. I think we've been communicating throughout the day. If you could take the PSI, which is the problem-solving inventory, just trying to save space there with the PSI. But it will come into play during this presentation. So if you need a moment, you can either grab the QR code or the tiny URL off of the bottom. But I also put into chat for those that might have taken the PSI already and are just waiting to hear about their score and what that means. I threw into chat a question about you thinking of a time you faced a challenge in the kitchen and a recipe gone wrong, missing ingredients. What was your approach to solving it? Thank you for putting the link in to the oh, is that survey link mine or is that the other one? I wasn't sure because I had a tiny URL.
Oh, nope. I'm sorry. Maybe ignore that one. I thought it was the one that was for yours, but
that's okay.
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
Robyn, that link goes to your problem-solving survey.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. That's perfectly fine. All right. Well, like I said, if you've already taken it, hold on to that score. We will get to that, and I will talk to you about that in a moment. But we need to obviously do a little bit of contextualizing to make sure that everybody comes along with us for those that didn't get a chance. If you do take the PSI, the problem-solving inventory, it's around 7 minutes, which is why we were trying to make sure folks took it before the session. So why are we here today? We're here to talk about problem solving and not about the people, because a lot of times that's what we might focus on, but we focus on solving problems. And I love that somebody's already wrote some information in here about trying to make a neat cheesecake and not sure what happened and tried again. I love it. So we're already seeing problem solving going on here. Boy, this one is a nice one, Carol Ann, about your pasta dish. I know, 5 o'clock Eastern time, and I'm thinking all of us will be quite hungry by the time this presentation is done. I promise that the problem wasn't to make you hungry, but to get give you food for thought. That's how we should look at it. So I see that we have some planning and thorough details coming from Carol Ann's post here. It's lovely. And then I see Nicole loves making cheesecake. I do too. I have a really great recipe that I pulled together from a couple different ones and cobbled together a lemon blueberry cheesecake that is a fan favorite in my house. But yes, I think you're all getting the hint a little bit about problem solving. I like to talk about food as I do my presentations. I like to draw analogies between the two because cooking and being in the kitchen, whether it's a commercial kitchen and you're, a master chef, or if you're just at home cooking and enjoying time with family or friends, it's a universal language. I'm not very good at math, which is the ultimate universal language, but food is the next best thing in my opinion, because we all eat and we have to figure it out, right? So you'll see a lot of extrapolation between cooking and kitchens and problem solving today, but we will also tie it to learning and development. There is a method to this madness. So I really was appreciating what we were seeing here with people saying, hey, this was a kitchen situation. and I did these things, especially the one where it was I went back out and I tried again. That shows resilience and confidence in problem solving. And then we think about the detail and the planning that we see here with each of the plates that are being provided in this other example. And I think about how that allows us to think about how we approach planning and doing things. And these are all part of your problem solving style. So I wanted to share one thing. Okay, sorry. I'm clicking a little too fast. What I wanted to show you is this screen, and maybe you can relate to this. So sometimes we have these great experiences in the kitchen, and sometimes we have awful ones, and sometimes we have something in between. So what you're seeing here is an actual image of a Thanksgiving meal planning schedule that I've created. So every year I have 4 brothers, I have like 9, 10 nieces and nephews, and I host Thanksgiving. And so I have to coordinate a complex meal of family members, and they're over eager to be in the kitchen with me. So now we know the adage of too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing. So, without this schedule that you're seeing here, we would have probably 4 or 5 people going, is the turkey done? When did you put it in? Like, maybe we should test it. Is the skin crispy enough? All these things going on. And then, well, we didn't make room. Somebody forgot about the green bean casserole and it needs a space in the kit, in the stove to reheat. And so we have all these things going on. And so that sheet of paper, though I get mocked for it, has been a lifesaver. But what also that document does is it demonstrates and represents my problem solving style to some extent. I like to create structure to prevent chaos. But my family members, I have to recognize that they have different styles of approaching solving problems. And so, some of them like to improvise and others prefer to focus on one dish perfectly. And some just want to jump in and help all over the place. So none of these approaches are wrong. They're not wrong, but you have to manage chaos. So, but if I wasn't understanding them, I wouldn't be able to accommodate their styles with that schedule that I created. We would be solving more about the people and not about the situation, which is the system of getting all the food cooked, right? We'd be focusing on my aunt coming in and being, this isn't the way grandma used to make it kind of things. That's a people problem. If we focus on getting everything cooked, we're focusing on the problem at hand. And if you see in the upper right corner, it's to serve that meal at 1:30 p.m. So could you, in your chat, share a brief example of how you've seen different working styles create friction or success for you in L&D? So if we just take this now and move over into L&D, we don't have to think about a Thanksgiving project like a big project with multiple people. We can figure out projects that are just us and a stakeholder that can create scenarios just like the Thanksgiving meal. So could you share a brief example in the chat of how you see different work styles create either friction or success when you're doing your L&D projects? What approaches have you noticed? And you can just use recent history. If currently you're not in a job role being active, you can always pull from your memory of a project that you really sticks out to you. And I'll pause a moment here while you do that. Too many cooks in a kitchen can derail a project for sure. And Nicole, I can appreciate what Nicole's saying because, recently we got to collaborate on a project with 4 other people on top of a whole other group of project folk. And so we ourselves, Nicole, myself, and 4 other people needed to learn how to figure out how we could all work together, but then also how we would help one another and support one another as we separated into our individual projects. Does anybody else have any thoughts about a time that they've looked at and seen different work styles work together? Okay, so sometimes an unknown happens. Maybe we forgot to, I see it says the oven stopped working. And then we could relate this to something in L&D like a subject matter expert isn't available when we want them to be or need them to be, a stakeholder that we thought we addressed all stakeholders, but maybe we forgot one and their opinion changes the entire trajectory of a project. I'm sure some of these are very relatable. The next thing I have in the chat is just asking, because I want to get a sense of everybody in the room. Could you use from number 1 through 4, and there's 4 choices here, when solving problems at work, do you typically do, and then let's just see what folks say. Do you typically jump in immediately? That's 1. Do you wait and observe? That's 2. 3, do you ask questions first? Or 4, do you avoid if possible? What good L&D person wouldn't be asking some questions? I see a couple 3s coming in. 1 and 4, I totally get it. I think maybe some of it is a little bit of that ambiguity that can get me, and that's why maybe sometimes I'll do a 2, because maybe it's ambiguous. So I might do a combo of 2 and 3. Some 1s, some people just jump right in immediately. That's awesome. Okay. Please feel free. I can't see the attendee list, so I'm not quite sure how many beautiful people are out in this audience, but please continue to participate. I've got chat questions coming for bits and pieces of this presentation, so I do hope that you will join me in contributing your thoughts and ideas. They're always welcome as we move on through the presentation. So I see that we've got some folks that like to kind of maybe get a little more systematic first before jumping right in, and then some. I haven't really seen too many 4s, but I can do it. Depending on the project, I might do a 4 too. I think we've all been there, right? So why does this have anything to do with problem solving? I've been building up little bits and pieces for you to start thinking about, are these things actually a style towards how we solve problems? Because don't we solve problems all day long? We're learning and development. And it became actually a point of fascination for me when I was getting my PhD, because I've been a consultant for 25 years and I started out as a contractor. And as a contractor, well, there's these misnomers we get to as solopreneurs that we have to have all the answers. Of course, you know, I'm more mature now in my professional being, but back then it was very much a lot of these things that I thought I had to be as a problem solver. And then when I went back to get my PhD and I was working with folks maybe newer in the field, I started to realize there was a difference in how I approached a problem versus them. And that became the crux of my dissertation. So it's evolved since then. So over the last 10 years, I've actually been not so much researching, but applying what I learned in my research of my dissertation, which was the curious question of, do you as an instructional design student, do you actually develop more expert problem solving skills as an instructional designer, depending on your learning environment? So face-to-face versus online. And what really came out of this, and it's still going on, because after 10 years, I'm still going back to the master's program. I'm still doing the pre and post with a group of students. And I also do this presentation for folks that are looking for professional development. And one of the things that comes out time and time again is the conscious awareness of all of this. So first and foremost, if anything you take away today is you're now consciously aware of how your style might be sitting in an environment and affecting not only your individual work, but how you play out in a team and team dynamics, but also the team's output. So that product that actually goes to the consumer, how is that approach your own personal problem solving approach and the combination of your team's problem solving approaches, how does that impact what is actually given to the end user? And so that's the big thing. If you can take that away for yourself today, that's perfect, because it gets you in that space of thinking. But there's some other benefits that I wanted to share with you today, which is it's just personal growth. Having some awareness allows us to tap into things maybe we didn't realize we were doing. Maybe we thought they were personal to us professionally, but it wasn't something anybody else really took note of. And so it gives us that opportunity to say, boy, I might want to work on something. Or, gee, this validates for me that I am doing something that I was wondering if I was doing well. It can also be about helping you understand effective collaboration. If you are aware of who you are as a problem solver and you start to get some understanding, because now that you're consciously aware, you may question differently how others in your team or your stakeholders approaching a problem. And it allows you to have a more neutral seat to the situation and allows you to collaborate more effectively. And finally, it allows you to be problem focused. And I haven't seen the name come up, but I always have this character called Bob that's just negative Bob. So if there's a Bob or a Robert in this room, I apologize in the beginning. I am not picking on you directly. They're just my made up person that is a mass accumulation of all the negative things that always happen in a project where people become the focus and you don't want to work with this person because they're just so negative. And that's where what we don't want to be. And so that's why I wanted to share this information with you today, because if we kind of nurture the Bobs of the world, we are more problem focused as opposed to people focused. And those are the things that I wanted us to think about today. So with that in mind, I want you to think about a time, and I'm sorry, I have two screens open, so I have to look away a little bit. So I want you to think about a recent L&D project that you faced. And here again, I'm putting it into the chat. And you kind of already started telling me about it through the number that you picked, but I want you to think about one word that describes how you typically approach. So now instead of a number, I want you to tell me, think about a recent L&D project. And I'm thinking about one that I did, and it's the last word in the choice in the chat, which is excitedly. I actually, it's been a while that I've been excited to take on a challenge. And as I like to say, chew on a challenge. But that's what happened to me recently. How about you? Could you share a little bit with me about what's been going on for you? Think of a recent L&D project that you've faced, and what's one word that you would say that would describe your approach? How you approached it. Intentional. I love that. Excited with a bit of frustration. Okay. I love it that you're excited. Sometimes I get a group of people that are just plain old frustrated. So it's super nice to see excited. I love the word intentional. I think that shows us that there's somebody deeply thinking, is being purposeful, that that they have a workflow that they're thinking about. And a little overwhelmed. That's very common, right, Amy? That we like, wow, it's going to be a cool project, but there's so many moving parts. I'm sure there's some theme like that going on there too. So all of these things are telling us about how you approached it. But what you're maybe not realizing just yet is that this is more of a term. A lot of the terms we're seeing are an emotion, right? Or a part of an emotion. And so it's a combination of two things. You're approaching it and you have a feeling about it. And so now we've talked about indirectly through these chat questions, the three dimensions of a problem solving style. So what are those? So think of a problem solving style as a default recipe for approaching challenges. It's comprised of three dimensions: your problem solving confidence, your desire to approach or avoid, and your personal control. So I want to take a look at all three of these in turn. So the first one up is, I think I might have bypassed my confidence. I did. So confidence, our problem solving confidence. What does this mean? It's how we handle ambiguous requirements. And some of it we just talked about. We saw some of you folks write in about ambiguity and unexpected challenges. That was also something noted, like the oven not working, but we also translated that to things like the stakeholder, we missed a stakeholder, or the SME's not available, right? Unexpected challenges. For example, this presentation, I did not realize the delivery format, and I needed to modify my presentation to come into a non-video style no breakout room kind of thing. And so I rose to the challenge. I felt confident enough that I could address it. I approached it by doing some intentional research, like Nicole put out. And then I didn't let it overwhelm me. and or the environment that I would have to deliver in not stress me out, which is a personal control thing. This is out of my control, but I can manage myself and make decisions that to solve the problem. And that is the crux of what your problem solving style is. So here we're looking at confident. How confident am I to take on this challenge? Now, approach and avoidance. These are pretty easy to think about. This is about like directing workflows. How do they complement each other? And sometimes approaching and avoidance could be about friction if you're misunderstood. So if we think about the Bob person that's maybe negating all of everybody's ideas about how to solve a problem, that can create friction. And so if we flip this around and think about it, a group of people were approaching the problem and trying to offer up solutions. And in some sense, we could say that the person negating was avoiding solving the problem. But instead of going, why are they being negative? We might want to better ask, why is Bob avoiding? Now, would we ask Bob, hey, Bob, why are you avoiding helping us solve this problem? There's different ways we could coach and encourage Bob to be involved. You know, hey, Bob, we've heard from everybody in the room. It sounds like you have some ideas that we haven't heard yet. And, you know, you like part of Susie's idea. You like part of, you know, Ramirez, his part of his ideas. Let's hear what you think might work. So instead of putting Bob on the spot and saying, you've been really negative about everybody, we're bringing Bob in a different way. And we're helping Bob to stop avoiding. And we're giving them an opportunity to approach. And our final one, and this is the one that I think can really, sorry, I'm trying to get my fingers here not to happily click away. But one of the things we can look about is this personal control. And it's how we respond, whether constructively or reactively. Sometimes we've had enough. We've had 5 things happen in a day. You know, you had a project moving along just fine, and then all of a sudden it's dropped off or it's put on hold. And then you're asked to do 10 other things. And then all of a sudden that project's back on the plate and it needs to be the priority over every other thing that you were just handed. That sometimes that just puts us off ourselves, right? And so we get really frustrated with those kind of things. And that's personal control. Sometimes it's us. We have to think about personal control from a couple different contexts, which is the idea that it could be the environment we're in, somebody external from us taking away what we feel is our control to manage or to approach or feel confident in approaching. And sometimes it could be us. It could be us that are saying, there's too many variables going on. I can't deal with this right now. This isn't a time for me to need to deal and address. And we see that a lot of times too, because we get a lot of things in L&D that become kind of dynamic more than they stay static. And if you're a person that needs pattern and routine to approach and you're super methodical, and you get a lot of ambiguity, that can really put your personal control out the door very quickly. So you may have noticed I've been describing each of these dimensions, and I could identify something within an action that somebody did or a decision related to that dimension, these 3 dimensions, the confidence, the approach avoidance, and the personal control. But I think you're noticing that I'm demonstrating to you that they're relating to each other. So in this final example, thinking about that negative team member again, we are now noting that control can impact confidence. So the idea of, so what I'm trying to point out here is we have something that's called reciprocal determinism. So what does that mean? Reciprocal determinism is something that comes from a great theorist. And again, I double clicked, my apologies. It comes from Albert Bandura. And these 3 pieces are a triangle, triadic reciprocity. So reciprocal determinism simply means, so I'm sorry, let me reposition. Reciprocal determinism, I want to elaborate on first, then I'll get to the triadic reciprocity. So what we're saying with reciprocal determinism is that it states that a person's behavior both influences and is influenced by personal factors in the social environment. Okay. The same can be said about our problem solving style. And we just want to cross those 3 dimensions. Now, those 3 dimensions comprise your problem solving style. And then there's 3 things that are going on in reciprocity that either you or something, one of the three variables, will influence. And that is your problem type, and you see that on screen, your problem urgency, and the environment. So Bandura was saying it's the person, the behavior, the environment, and personal factors. For us in L&D, it becomes about the type of problem you're dealing with, the urgency of the problem, and the environment in which you're dealing with it. Now you see the triangle or the arrows double-ended. That's the triadic reciprocity. That means that at any point in time, one can be influencing the other. So case in point, I'll give you an example. It's not cooking, even though I could probably do one real quick here. It's the one I like to give because it's a real simple one to think about. Working for a university, needed to go to the city and introduce the new president to some alumni. So myself and a coworker, we're in a rental car and we get a flat tire. And I live in Pennsylvania, so we're on the interstate going to Philadelphia. First things first, I make a decision. It's an urgent need to get off the road safely. It's urgent that we get our vehicle fixed quickly because we need to be in front of some alumni to introduce our new president. So there's a lot of urgency here. But the type of problem we have is a flat tire at this current time. I'm confident to change the tire, but here becomes my environmental problem. I'm in a dress, it's the interstate, and it's raining and it's windy. I am not getting down on the ground and changing a tire. So I ask, once I call the rental place, they say call AAA. I call AAA. AAA won't be there for 45 minutes, which is where I say, okay, we can change it. And so I asked the coworker, can you please change the tire? I've never changed a tire before, he said, so I can't do it. And I said, how about I teach you over the shoulder? And honestly, they didn't trust it. They questioned everything I asked them to do. And in particular, at the end, like, are you sure that's where you placed the jack to put it up? Why do you have to take off this before you, jack up the car, like taking the lug nuts off the tire before you push the car up, and so on and so forth. And right at the end, when they were putting on the lug nuts, I taught them the star pattern, and they questioned me 3 times on it. Why can't we just go around? And I said, it's about balancing the tire out. Well, here comes AAA. And AAA comes over and looks at what we've done, looks at us and says, did you do the star pattern? And so we said yes, and zing, zing, zing. They were like, thanks for making our job easy, and off they went. So what out of this is my problem solving style? My problem solving style kicked in because I said I was confident, but I avoided because the environment was out of my control. So there's all 3 in play. I'm confident to change a tire. I would happily have approached it, but I had to avoid it given my environment. Had my environment or my clothes been different, I would have probably changed it myself. Now, the urgency, this is where it becomes key for us to think about things. I don't know if you noticed, I told you the story in a chronological sense. I called the rental company. I called AAA. Then I made a decision. That was probably one of the biggest keys I found in my dissertation research. We all make a hierarchical decision-making process based off of how we're reacting in that triadic triangle of reciprocity. So we could be okay to work with somebody that's quite negative, but we might need to maybe go do some meditation first, or create a plan with the manager on how to deal with something that might be difficult with a SME or a stakeholder. So we have to think about those things in combination that we will take. And most times people will try to solve the problem themselves first. And when they can't, they will try alternate methods. Now, there are people that are total avoiders that will sit back and wait for somebody else to maybe take over the room and manage, volunteer first, that type of thing. Now, I have another question for you in the chat because I'm hoping I've got your brains thinking here, and I'm just trying to get this. So I want you to think about a recent L&D challenge, and you will put into 1, 2, or 3. What do you think most influenced your approach to this L&D challenge you had? Did the complexity of the problem, was that the thing that influenced you the most? Was it the pressure of the project? Maybe it had a really tight timeline. Was that what influenced you the most in solving the challenge? Or maybe it was a work or team dynamic. Maybe you were really excited to get to work with some people again. So for those that are saying 3, your work environment and team dynamics is what influenced your approach. Would you say it's about it being a positive experience or maybe not as positive? Like getting to work with Nicole was exciting. So for 3 for me was influencing it because I was going to be collaborating with somebody I wanted to collaborate with, which made it even more fun and exciting to take on this challenge. Not so positive. Okay. And for those that aren't having a positive related to 3, where do you think you fell? Do you think you fell into still being confident, or do you think your personal control ticked up a notch, or do you think you maybe were avoiding, like kind of procrastinating? I see some 2s, time pressure. Oh, no true collaboration was happening. Thank you for sharing, Veronica. So that can be really difficult. Confidence, control tick-ups. Okay, wonderful. So we can still have individual confidence, but we can also have our environment making us feel a bit out of control. And that can really create challenges because now we're not talking, now we're focused on people again, right? We're not focused on the problem. Because if collaboration isn't being effective, then what does the product and solution look like for the ultimate end consumer, our learner? And that's what we start to think about. And then there's maybe we try to do double duty. We try to control more of it because we're confident to get it done. And if we can just kind of tame that person that's not being very collaborative, we can maybe get things done. And sometimes that actually spins things out worse than what we originally intended. Okay. I really like where we're going with this. So I think now we have a good understanding, and I'll take a moment to pause because we're going to jump into your PSI scores, and I will flip over into another document that I want to share with you. And then you can also, I do have a document, or excuse me, a QR code for you to get this document as well. So I'm trying to get there for you. So this QR code will take you to the document I'm about to move over to. I just want to pause here for a moment to allow you to get your own grab of this. You do not need Dropbox. It should just open. It's a PDF file for you. And then I'm going to need to change the screen. So I'll pause here for just another moment. And what we'll be doing is looking at your PSI scores and then telling you a little bit about your approach. So if you took that PSI problem solving inventory. And by the way, the problem solving inventory is a valid tool. It was created by a gentleman called Puckney Hepner. It's P. Puckney Hepner. So I believe the first P is Paul, but he goes by Puckney, excuse me. It's a validated tool in psychology. You can use it for non-personal problem solving. So there's actually research out there utilizing Dr. Hepner's tool where engineers looked at their problem solving skills, because engineers, doctors, learning and development professionals, we all solve complex problems all day long. We have variables that come at us in different ways in different moments. If we're contractors or clients, we always have a ton of different variables coming to us. And so much like a doctor or an engineer, we need to take our frameworks and our knowledge and skills and create a solution that may be novel compared to the last time we did something. Thank you for also putting that in. That is actually going to a survey, Nicole. That's not actually going to the tool. Let me see if I can copy paste it out of my. No, it's okay. I appreciate you trying to help me. Thank you. There's the tiny URL. And then what I'm going to do now is stop sharing here, and I'm going to pick another slide. Just one moment here. And then we're going to take a look at what it means. And so what you have in front of you, and I hope you can all see this, and please, download this and take this. And I can always go back if you need the QR code to take the PSI, the problem solving and inventory, you can as well. And you can take this as many times as you like. I will tell you that I am not collecting data. So that means that if you go to that survey and take it, there's no data I'm keeping on the backside, and nor is it asking for anything of you. So what you're looking at on the first page is just a brief write-up, because a lot of people start to go, is this good? Is this bad? Is this good? Is this bad? I really want you all to understand that your PSI results provide you insights into how you approach challenges and you solve problems. So this isn't a good or bad thing. Think of these scores as a tendency across your dimensions. Now, if you took the problem solving inventory and thought about any problem all day long, your score may be a little different than if you were maybe solving a problem at work that was L&D related. We do see distinctions in how people solve problems for everyday life, maybe in their life dynamics, maybe they're, trying to get this juggling kids' schedules for dance and sports and things like that, versus what we might do in a work situation. And we might have a different temperament, different control, and we might have a different style of approaching or avoiding, because maybe the professional version of us doesn't have to deal with certain things in the personal. So please be mindful that if you haven't taken it, it's really encouraging you to think only about your work-related challenges and problems. So I kind of wrote here, think of your problem solving score as your personal dashboard, showing you areas of natural strength and opportunities for development. And one's profile is different. The patterns have their own advantages in certain situations. So I don't want anybody to think, well, I'm failing, because that's not the point here. Nobody's failing. Now, if you want to interpret those pieces of information, we'll look at this table here. And I believe in the bottom right, you can actually go to a full screen so that you can see this document in larger format. If I do that, I won't be able to see the chat. And I want to make sure if you have any questions that I can see those, because for some of you that did do your score, you might have a question. I want to make sure I can answer it for you. So if you have a lower score, so you get an overarching score, you get a problem solving overall arching score, and then you will get a score per dimension. Now, the lower score means you have a stronger tendency in that dimension. So for example, if you're sitting somewhere around 11 in problem solving confidence, then it probably means you're very confident. And it might mean that you're one of those people that jump right in and begin doing the work. Now, we can also be overconfident. That's why I'm saying we have to think about these as a balance. So even though you might have confidence to do something, you could be overconfident and you could miss an important detail because you're like, oh, this is just like another project we did. No problem. We'll move on, and bing, bang, boom, it's done. Not realizing maybe, again, to one of those earlier comments that we made, maybe you're missing a stakeholder that needed to have a voice heard so that the solution was more holistic and served more of the people of the organization. Maybe the people that brought you in on the project decided not to include somebody, and you trusted what they told you, and that was overly confident on your part, and therefore you didn't ask some of those questions, which some of you said, I ask questions first, which is your way of approaching, not avoiding, approaching. And maybe you're doing it because you are confident, but you want to approach with questions so that you can validate your confidence. So there's all sorts of ways we can mix and mingle these variables together. And remember, depending on the type of situation we're in, the type of problem we have, and the urgency of that problem and the environment, these numbers could go up and down. So for example, when I do this with the students in the master's program for instructional design here in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, sometimes I see at the end of a semester, we will see little upticks, maybe by 1 or 2 points in personal control. And so the students start thinking to themselves, well, is that a bad thing? Am I now not a rational person for solving problems? And I tell them that's, we have to think situationally. You're taking this at the end of a semester. You just want the gauntlet in 3 classes. The class in particular you're in is your capstone, and it had teamwork. It had you presenting professionally in front of professionals in the industry, and you're looking for a job. There's a lot of variables in your environment that were a little different than when you started at the beginning of the semester. You could have had very challenging people on your team. So those are all reasons. It doesn't mean, oh my goodness, you've undeveloped skills. It just means situationally, that number might disappear in another 3 or 4 months, or it might increase because maybe your job prospects are low, that type of thing. Now, if we look at the 3 dimensions of problem solving, we can see that there's the overall score, and that's just telling you your general tendency. So if you're sitting somewhere around 96, anywhere from probably like 85 to like 120, somewhere in there, probably a very good problem solver that kind of balances out all the different facets of, the environment, the type of problem, the urgencies, the people in the mix. You probably have a good head on your shoulders, as they would say. But if you start to see one of these variables with a really high number, that's something to tune into. So, for example, with emerging talent in the field, not just students, but emerging talent or people transitionally shifting in the L&D space, we begin to see folks that might have their confidence being down right now, especially for those that maybe were let go from a job, because that takes their confidence away. And so it's a professional development goal to bolster that confidence. How can they do that? Well, maybe you volunteer for a nonprofit and you help them to refresh their volunteer onboarding training. So that gives you a portfolio piece, boost your confidence. You're approaching a challenge, being unemployed, by doing something novel that's getting you a little out of your comfort zone, but allowing you to continue to be strengthened. Or for those that are maybe in a new job role, like maybe you've taken on a leadership role, or maybe you took on new client work that, even though it was supposed to be one way when the client told you the work, and it's turning out to be completely the flip, and you're wondering what you got yourself into and how can you back yourself out of it, you could see your numbers also be situationally different. So be mindful if whether or not your professional life is one of has I can't say the word. It's volatile. So for me, for example, as a consultant, last year at the end of the year, I can guarantee you my emotional personal control was up a bit because all these great contracts I had in hand disappeared. Everybody tightened up their budgets or decided to do a freeze on taking on, contractual work. So guaranteed work disappeared. It didn't deflate my confidence, but it sure made me feel like I was out of control. So those are some things that we can think about when it comes to these pieces in this document. So on the second page and on the second and third pages, I break down and give you examples of different things. So for example, if we're looking at here at page 2, you might see that there's the mid-range on problem solving confidence. You see an example, you're comfortable solving technical issues, but may feel less confident addressing interpersonal conflict. And here's a suggested development strategy. Identify specific problems that challenge your confidence and gradually practice with increasingly complex versions. Now, for some of you that have the low score, which is saying you're pretty confident, this might be an opportunity for you to stretch your skills differently. Maybe it's not about telling you to develop yourself more from a confidence standpoint. Maybe you have the opportunity to help somebody else develop their problem solving skills. Maybe you can utilize that confidence to mentor, coach, or guide. So there's other opportunities in which you could do different things when you know your scores. And so that's what makes a little bit of this fun when you start to think about it's not just about me developing myself more, how can I also help others? And I kind of get to that on page 3, this table down here, I purposefully put in here because it's a really nice way for those that are walking back into the work, your work day. Think about these things in a team setting. So I have who you will work well with, how you complement them, and an example. So we were talking about this Bob earlier. And so if you're a strong problem solving confidence person and you've got somebody that's more of an avoider, maybe a little negative about things, you can be paired with somebody like that. And then you can help to contribute by giving them, the pathway forward, and persisting and asking good questions. So it doesn't mean that you need everybody to be confident on the project. What I'm demonstrating in this table is you can mix and match your problem solving styles and have a really effective team. Because one of the things we discover from research is that we get a lot of groupthink on problem solving. If people are not comfortable, like if everybody had like a high score in avoidance, which means you tend to avoid, you may tend to avoid questioning another person's opinion. You all could be people that tend to not question authority or stakeholders. And so then you just create the project based on what was told to you, as opposed to asking and approaching and asking good questions. So sometimes having everybody be similar can actually be detrimental to the project from a problem solving standpoint. The final page, and I just wanted to share just real quick about the final page, what I did for you here, and we can save some room here to talk about some things, but I gave you a team problem solving scenario. But I also make a recommendation on making the most of your results, such as thinking about different positions, create different problem solving styles. The confidence that I have now is different than the confidence I had 15 years ago. 15 years ago, I was confident that I could do good development work in authoring tools and that I was an okay-ish project manager. Now I would tell you I'm not so confident to do development work because I've decided to develop more project management skills because I really seem to have a passion for it. And I like to do that multitasking, parallel processing. So nowadays I would tell you that my role is a little different, and I definitely solve problems much differently than I did back then. Many of my questions I would have asked 15 years ago would have been around solving problems in using the development or authoring tools. Or if it was a facilitator guide, thinking about solving problems from a very development designer standpoint. Whereas now I'm looking at things more systemically because I'm a project manager. So I'm thinking about more of that interrelationship and the collaborative, aspects or risk to the project. I'm thinking more global about something as opposed to siloed. And so when we have the opportunity to think about our own problem solving styles, we can also then maybe mute our concern about questions that we get asked. Kind of like the gentleman saying, "Are you sure that this is the star pattern?" The person who kept asking me questions. I needed to not be upset by this person. They weren't creating a problem because they weren't just listening to me. I needed to assure them and give them confidence to trust me. And so that's how another way we look at focusing on the problem and not the people. I could have very much made it about that person and been like, "Quit questioning me. Just do as I'm telling you." And if you've ever thought that to yourself, sometimes we go back to our corners after a meeting and think, well, if they just do what I say, we'd be fine. Think about that and the perspective that maybe we might need to come back and have a different perspective for the person at hand. So those are some things I wanted you to think about with this document as well. So with that being said, I'm trying to think. I do have one more slide I need to bump back. But I would love for those that did, and I'm trying to get my other slides back. I apologize. Oh, it's going to start us over again. So I wanted to get to the end here. Who out of here had, does anybody want to share their scores? And if not, I do have some other things I can show you that are what I call agnostic tools rooted in systems thinking that can help you expedite and further remove the people problem and focus on the problem. I'm not sure if folks are familiar with systems thinking, but it's a great hand in glove to learning about your problem solving styles. And it's actually how I do work with folks and teams. But if there's anybody that would like to share about their score or has a question about their score, I'd be happy to answer that. And the thank you and the QR code here is actually up to my LinkedIn if you have questions later because you need time to reflect. And while that's doing that, I'm going to see if I can actually, I'm all about more resources, right on, Carol Ann. So I don't have a slide for it, but I will take this down because we don't need to look at this while we're talking. If I can go back, maybe, I don't know why this is not stopping. I'm sorry. I'm trying to make it stop sharing and it won't. Oh, there we go. Thank you. So systems thinking. I'm teaching you the universal 4 pieces. These are 4 things every human does. Okay. So problem solving is not similar to DISC at all. And I'm not going to say too much about DISC, only other than in recent months, it's been brought to my attention by a few people. And when I was in a conference, it was actually debunked as a tool, that the measures don't have the merit. And I know that that might ruffle feathers, but I haven't looked at the research myself, but a research person did and was, kind of doing this debunking of things. But the problem solving tool is actually a valid tool in psychology that helps people to start to understand from childhood to adulthood their problem solving abilities and how that affects relationships, how it affects them professionally. So when we think about our problem solving style for L&D, we need to think about, how do I approach work and our challenges and problems? How does that affect the work that I do? So a great example I like to give people is analysis paralysis. Ambiguity creates an indication that we lack confidence. And when we're asking those questions, but here's the thing, you're not confident, so you're asking more questions because you want to be confident you get the solution right. But then people are waiting on you. And so what it looks like to your team members or your boss or your client is that you're avoiding the work. And I've had that happen before, and it's quite interesting. So what you think for you is coming out is, I'm being a good ambassador, I'm asking good questions. What people are seeing is, why are you stalling? Why are you avoiding? I'm not saying that happens in every situation, but we need to think about the perspective of the other people as we're solving the problem, especially when we're doing it collaboratively. If we're doing it independently and individually, we need to think about, how does your problem solving style lift you up and make you able to do and drive forward success in your independent role? How does it contribute to the overall success of a team and the product that goes to our learners? Because sometimes we get so caught up in the problems and maybe the people that the product that eventually goes to the person is half of what it should be, really doesn't hit the mark. And we have a whole dissatisfied group of people, and we need to revisit this problem again. So we're trying to help ourselves be consciously aware of how we solve versus us just going, the problem at hand is the problem at hand. So with that being said, tools, and I know how much time we have now. Systems thinking, I'm going to write these 4 letters, DSRP. DSRP. So at the end of the day, systems thinking is about how, don't think just technology systems. We breathe, that is a system. The human body is a system with smaller systems sitting in it. Learning and development is a set of systems. There is a system for us to analyze a problem. There is a system for us to develop a solution. There's a system to deliver. There's a system to measure. And that creates what we call a learning ecosystem. So there's systems within systems. When we do our thinking and create our mental models, everybody does this. It doesn't matter if you're a creative thinker, a strategic thinker, a critical thinker. It does not matter. We do these 4 things. We make D distinctions. So what is it? What isn't it? Who has it? Who doesn't? We do S. We have systems. We have parts of systems and wholes of systems. So I just described parts and wholes of a learning ecosystem to you all. R is for relationships. So we see maybe that if we don't do a good needs analysis, we might come up with a poor solution. And that is all actually rooted in how we solve problems. So again, if we're thinking about our relationships, there's a relationship between our problem solving style and our ability to do our work and our ability for our team to do our work. Then P is perspective. So you heard me talking about that a lot, like we need to hold more space for other people's perspectives. And so the perspective of the stakeholder, when they're saying, well, can't you just do this with microlearning? We have to realize they're not in L&D. So we need to, 1, recognize their perspective. 2, talk to them in a way that helps them understand without our jargon. So that's respecting their perspective while helping to make distinctions. What it is, what it isn't. Can it do this? Can it do that? So DSRP, like, how do I put that into action? How do I solve problems with that? Well, if I can get this to come up, which I'm hoping I can, here is 2 different examples, and I hope this is now sharing with you all. I will try to make this a little larger. So in the moment when I was doing this at a conference last year, I do these little worksheets. And so in the middle of the conference, the one person said, this just happened while I was in your session. This VP is complaining about this video again. And I let them talk. And so everybody started to try to solve the problem at hand, which is how to placate the stakeholder and get the video done. And what I was able to do, because systems thinking helps you to think about icebergs, the problem at the top was the literal VP and the training. So that's the iceberg they see, but they weren't thinking about all the things underneath the water. And this document helped that individual begin to see all the things that systemically created systematic issues that generated the problem they were dealing with that day. A lot of it was that their L&D function did not have a lot of operational processes in place. They didn't have communication pieces. They didn't have an expectation setting with the VP. So there were a lot of things that came out. Oh, I opened up the wrong one. I do apologize. Let me flip over to that one. This is the one that was the VP. My bad. I apologize. So we started to see that there were certain things related and not related that take us through recognizing the person did have a current problem that needed to be addressed, but to resolve future problems like this, because they said, this is a repetitive problem we've been having now for over a year. We started and think about this. This was a presentation at a conference that was 60 minutes, just like this one. And we resolved finding out for them 4 issues that they could go back and help, 1, build team collaboration, policies, and develop some onboarding for SMEs and new leadership that are hired into their job roles. The other image that I shared with you was actually for another client, and this was a 3-month directive that they couldn't do, which was set up a file repository, set up the naming convention, set up the version control, and set up a set of templates for folders. In less than 45 minutes, something that they couldn't figure out in 3 months because they were a group of people that solved problems collaboratively, all 4 of them had to agree. So here again, we see problem solving actually creating a problem more than a solution. And I took the project manager, and 45 minutes later with this tool, we just did a distinctions, DSR and P. We made distinctions, relationships, systems, and perspectives. And we came up with a solution, and we came up with a folder template. 45 minutes for 3 months of angst. So those tools I don't have to share, but I'm happy to share via LinkedIn if you need to see something else. But I do know that it is pretty much time. I do see that Lorianne did share her scores. Thank you for sharing them. I'm sorry we won't get to talk about them, Lorianne, but I do appreciate it. But that is what I wanted to share with you tonight about problem solving in you and your teams, and how you can keep the focus on solving a great problem and keeping it away from the people as you continue to collaborate. So thank you very much for having me this evening. I really appreciate it.
Well, that was amazing, Robyn. I learned so much. I really was just following along with everything there. And I just dropped your LinkedIn profile in the chat if anybody wants to follow up. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Lewis, as always. And we hope everyone has a wonderful evening.